During the next half hour, we'll talk with Cardinal Blase Cupich about worldwide protocols put in place by the Holy See following the historic meeting in Rome on the protection of children. And we'll give you a behind-the-scenes look at the televised Sunday Mass from Mercy Home for Boys and Girls. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Hello, I'm Todd Williamson, Director of the Office of Divine Worship for the Archdiocese of Chicago. Joining me here in the studio is Cardinal Blase Cupich. Cardinal, it's good to see you. Welcome.
Todd, always good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Cardinal, the last time we recorded this program, you had just returned from the historic meeting in Rome on the protection of children. Here we are now just a month later, and already there's substantial action taken by the Pope in Rome.
Yes, Holy Father has decided to act quickly, and I knew that following the meeting because we were asked to come together to help map out some steps forward in a concrete way, because that really was what he wanted. And so he began by sending a signal about what is expected through the Universal Church by showing what's being done in Vatican City. And he sets obligations to report to authorities. He helps people understand what their obligations are for reporting and how to do it. Care for victims is a high priority. He also wants to make sure that if someone is accused of offending a child, that they are withdrawn from their position for protection, but also, in fact, they're convicted that they will not remain in their post. So that sets, in many ways, a template for the Universal Church. And there are some other steps that will be coming out very soon, which I covered in an article that I wrote for our Catholic Chicago Catholic.
And those steps are?
Well, for instance, one of them would be procedures by which bishops are disciplined, either for their misconduct or for mishandling of cases. Another would be changes in Book 6 of the Code of Canon Law with regard to issues such as the pontifical secret, which will not be a part of the procedures going forward. Also, the establishment of task forces to help under-resourced countries and dioceses to put together their plans. He also is one who wants to make sure that all of the Roman offices, the dicasteries as they call them, know what their procedures are to be once they receive these cases. So there will be a number of steps in a progressive way, and the Holy Father has decided to act quickly, boldly, and in a concrete way.
And this is for all over the world, not just in the United States.
That's exactly right. And of course, our Bishops' Conference will be dealing with procedures for handling cases involving bishops, either misconduct or mishandling, this June. And so things seem to be in place now for all of that to occur.
Now, this isn't just for children. He coined a phrase, or vulnerable, any vulnerable adult.
Right, any vulnerable adult. And he's very specific about who they are. People who either lack physical or mental capacities, people also who are taken advantage of because of their position. So he's very pronounced about that, and he understands it. This all comes from his direct conversation with victims. All of us as bishops have learned where we should be going in terms of bringing healing to our church, but also safety to our parishes and schools through the intervention of victims. Yeah. And they've helped us quite a bit.
So this meeting in Rome was not just a photo op. It was meant to produce action.
It was a moment in which the Holy Father's two goals were accomplished. The first is that there would be a common ownership around the world globally for this issue, that no one could walk away from that meeting and say, it's not my problem. And the second would be that there would be concrete steps, which now he has shown he means business through this latest action.
Excellent. going to bring it a little closer to home now.
Sure.
Right? Just recently, you, along with other bishops from the province, from the state of Illinois, were down in Springfield opposing legislation that would dramatically change abortion laws in the state. There was a news conference where you spoke, as well as a few healthcare professionals. Let's hear what they had to say in this clip.
Okay, great.
As physicians, we take an oath to do no harm. We offer patients an objective treatment plan based on medical training and scientific testing. It has been a long-standing practice, however, to respect doctors' rights of conscience when they are asked to perform a morally objectionable procedure. I am alarmed by this statement in the legislation that an embryo or fetus has no independent rights. This is exploitative language that can be used to attack any legislation that protects the unborn. I love taking care of women and delivering babies. If this legislation passes, I am not going to leave the medical profession and abandon women who need good health care. But I will refuse to perform an abortion. I ask lawmakers to preserve our conscience rights and to reject this legislation.
When I first started my career in 1984, the chances of survival of a baby born at 28 weeks gestation was about 50%. Today, that 50-50 chance extends to babies delivered at only 23 weeks gestation. At St. John's NICU, 98% of our infants survive to leave the hospital. In fact, the youngest baby born in our hospital, who survived and went home with her mom and dad, was delivered at just 22 weeks and 6 days gestation. She is now 5 years old and started kindergarten last fall with the rest of her age group. I am stunned at how the proposal legislation goes further than Supreme Court ruling in Roe v. Wade when it flatly states that an embryo or a fetus has no independent rights. The infants that I get to care for every day are tiny human beings. They look at you, they grimace, cry, or pull back their heels to react to pain. They comfort with a gentle touch or cradling, and they hear and recognize their mom's voices. They have their own unique temperament and personality from the very beginning. I urge lawmakers to reject House Bill 2495 and Senate Bill 1942. Thank you.
Cardinal, what were some of the points that you wanted to make in your comments at that news conference?
Well, there are two bills right now that are being proposed in both houses. One of them has to do with revamping the entire understanding and legislation dealing with abortions, so that there's a new phrase that's being used.
Oh.
Instead of just a right of a woman to choose, which Roe versus Wade proclaimed, it also now, this new legislation says that the child in the womb has absolutely no rights. There is no dignity, human dignity, that needs to be protected. And it also does away with the Abortion Non-Refusal Act, which threatens, in the long run, the conscience rights of those people who work in healthcare facilities. And I think that those are very extreme ways in which we're asking to, as a state, to pass laws that not only threaten the life of the unborn, but threaten as well the free conscience of people. Yeah. The second bill has to do with the parental notification. We have a law already, and in fact there's an exemption for that. If a person who is a minor feels threatened or shows maturity, they can go to a judge and have an exemption. But now this would be a blanket sweeping away of any notification to parents at all. Parents have to be notified for vaccinations, for other kinds of procedures as well that are less serious. And so we should do everything possible as a state and as a society to strengthen the arm of parents as they look for ways to raise their children. This in some way eviscerates that and takes away the responsibility and the involvement of parents.
What does this say about the regard for the dignity and the sanctity of unborn children?
Well, it really threatens it altogether because it really erases any human dignity at all. Let's remember here, this is not just a clump of cells. These fetuses, these children in the womb, are human lives.
Yeah.
They're not some other kind of life. They're not aardvarks. They are human beings, and they have the DNA of every human being. And so it's important for us to keep in mind that we have to protect the dignity everywhere we look in the world today. Human dignity is threatened, whether it's human trafficking or ways in which the poor are neglected and not given health care. There are so many threats, even terrorism itself. Why should we contribute to that ongoing dehumanization of our dignity as human beings?
Yeah. So this can be seen as a pivotal moment for some of these concerns around the areas of abortion.
That's right.
Yeah. Cardinal, I'm glad you were there. Thank you for the comments that you voiced there, but as well as here to our viewers.
Right.
So while we're recording this, we're still in the season of Lent. But when this airs, it's going to be in the first couple of weeks of Easter. What are you looking forward to, and why is Easter such an important part of our faith lives?
Well, it's the core of what we believe. If Jesus, as St. Paul said, did not rise from the dead, we are a sorry state and no better off. As he comes back from the dead, he comes back to the dead for us. I think it's important to keep that in mind. He just didn't go to the Father and leave us abandoned. He gave us His Spirit. So this whole season of Easter, all the way to Pentecost, is an opportunity to reflect and become more attuned to how Jesus is not only risen from the dead 2,000 years ago, but working and active in the life of the church today.
Yeah. One of the main things we do in the celebration of Easter as Catholics is we renew our baptism. We bring in those who've been journeying with us. They die in the font. They rise a new creation. So these 50 days are really a part of it is about that new life we've received, yes?
It is. And in fact, it is, I've always reflected on this. When the women went to the tomb, they saw men who were sitting there dressed in white robes, these angels. And yet when we have our baptisms on the Easter Vigil, many times those newly baptized are dressed in that very same way. So they are the ones who are announcing the resurrection of Christ through their own coming to new life. And the Church needs that kind of fresh understanding of what it means to rise from the dead as we see that happening in their lives.
Yeah. And then try to hopefully have that mirrored in our own lives.
Yeah.
We've spent 40 days of penance, of reflection, of preparation, and really now it's all about the celebration of that.
It is. It's a deepening of this great mystery. We need the 50 days because this is such an overwhelming, unheard of event in human history that changed the course of human history. So we need these 50 days, but also to ask ourselves, how is Christ rising in me? How is my life different? What new beginnings can I have? We see in nature the new growth sprouting on the trees, that coming from the ground. It's an opportunity for us to ask ourselves, what new life can sprout up in my life?
Yeah. It's happening all over the world, right? The whole world proclaims the resurrection in some ways. Right. Cardinal, just recently you were at Mercy Home for Boys and Girls to tape the Easter Mass celebration. That's one of their most important ministries. Is they air the Sunday Mass on WGN-TV. In just a moment, Father Scott Donahue will join us. Why is that Mass, that televised Mass, so important here in the Archdiocese?
Well, there are many people who do not have the ability to leave their home or hospital bed or nursing homes. And it's a way for us to give real expression to what it means to be the body of Christ. If one member suffers, we all suffer. And that's what we really want to. But it also, I think, is an opportunity for the people who are involved in that ministry, who come to the Mass itself, to be in contact, maybe in their own personal way, with people who are sick and infirmed in their own family. I know that talking to some of the people who attend that Mass, it prompts them to be more attentive to their family members who might be in those situations, or to the sick, or visit the hospitals. I always try during the Easter season, before Easter, to visit hospitals to see people, because it
That's
really
right.
is a way in which we put our fingers in the hands and the wounds of those who are suffering. And there we see Christ really coming to life as we have those exchanges.
Oh, wow. What a profound image there. I think it's also profound for those who are homebound that at Easter and at Christmas, when they watch the Mass, it's their shepherd who's celebrating that. I think that's important.
Well, you know, there is that ancient understanding that wherever the bishop is, that's where the church is. So I want these people to know, who are watching, that the church is with them and in them and part of their lives.
What a great Easter message. Thank you. Cardinal, thank you for all your thoughts here.
Thank you.
We're going to ask our viewers to stick around, because when we come back, we're going to take a look at what goes into producing the Mercy Home for Mass for its television audience.
Good morning, welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Catholic Chicago is on the air. Tune to WNDZ 750 AM weekdays from 8 to 9 in the morning to be informed, inspired, and entertained. From what's going on at your parish to news from the Vatican, listen and learn or join the conversation. That's 7:50 a.m. weekdays at 8 a.m. or online at archchicago.org. Click on Radio TV. Be an informed Catholic. Listen to Catholic Chicago.
We'll be back after these messages, and again, do not touch that dial.
Chicago Catholic, in print or online, is your go-to source for news about the Catholic Church. In-depth coverage that stretches from Chicago to the Vatican. Thought-provoking articles, including columns from Cardinal Blase Cupich, photographs that inspire, reviews of movies, books, and TV columns. Go to chicagocatholic.com to subscribe. Be an informed Catholic. Subscribe to Chicago Catholic today.
Welcome back to Catholic Chicago. If you're just joining us, I'm Todd Williamson, and for this part of the show, I'm joined in studio by Father Scott Donahue, who is the president and CEO of Mercy Home for Boys and Girls. Father Scott, it's good to see you again. I'm glad you're here.
Todd. Thanks.
It's great to
Thanks
have
for
you
having
here.
me.
Not
Yeah,
at all.
appreciate it.
Say, listen, just for the viewers who may not know, tell us a little bit, what does Mercy Home for Boys and Girls do?
So Mercy Home for Boys and Girls has been a part of the Archdiocese of Chicago for 132 years.
Wow.
And the home has taken care of children in the simplest form of kids who otherwise would not have a home.
Is it an orphanage?
So it's not, it would be initially kind of understood as an orphanage. Some would call it a group home, but it's a home. And that's how I like to talk about it. It's a home for these kids who otherwise would not have a home. These are young kids who come from abuse, neglect, not wanted, kids who come with some severe trauma in their lives, children who the parents are unable to care for, or the parents are simply not present, oftentimes being raised by a grandmother who can't do it any longer, and so the child is entrusted to our care.
Wow, wow. So previously in the show, the earlier part of the show, the Cardinal and I were talking about all sorts of things with the legislation about abortion in Illinois, the whole topic of human dignity.
Yep.
Mercy Home then really does uphold that element of our faith, doesn't it?
That's really well said. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So these young people, so our age population is from 6th grade right through college.
Wow.
And once a young person comes to Mercy Home, we make a commitment to them that they will always be a part of the Mercy Home community as long as they need us. We don't want to create dependency, but we give them the best of education. First and foremost, a safe home to live in, because so many of these kids have not lived in safety. We give them the therapeutic services necessary to deal with their own woundedness in life, because again, these kids come from some pretty traumatic life experiences. And what we give them is a home. We give them love and affection and direction and hope. And yes, that's the gospel.
Wow, wow. And that's not all that Mercy Home does. I mean, there's a number of things that are part of the entity of Mercy Home, right? There's a printing press, there's a printing company, but then also one of the things that Mercy Home does is you produce the weekly televised Mass for the homebound, for the hospital-bound. You've been doing that for a number of years, broadcast on WGN TV.
That's right. So when WGN used to host the TV Mass in their studio, and they gave it up about 27 years ago, it's a wonderful ministry. I mean, it's a ministry that reaches out and brings the prayer of the church to those, as you just said, those who are homebound or hospitalized. And so Mercy's thought there's a natural partnership there. And why don't we bring the TV Mass to Mercy Home? So for 27 years we've been doing it. And we enter in sort of a prayer partnership with those who watch the Mass and participate in the Mass from home. About 60,000 viewers, believe it or not, every Sunday.
Oh my gosh.
And so our promise is that we will pray for those who are homebound and sick and offer them the prayer of the church. And we ask in return that they would pray for our children.
Oh my, now you're in my bailiwick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're talking about the liturgy.
Yes.
And this is what I really want to talk with you about.
Sure.
But first, our production crew, our own Office of TV and Radio, was there at Mercy Home this past weekend. They put together a behind-the-scenes video on the production of the televised Mass. Let's take a look at that here.
I was with them.
Cue the procession, dissolve one.
Give glory to our risen King. Raise your voice.
The televised Mass has been recorded in the Our Lady of Mercy Chapel at Mercy Home for Boys and Girls for 27 years. It began at the request of Cardinal Joseph Bernardine, who saw the televised Mass as a source of spiritual nourishment for the homebound.
We have about 60,000 viewers who each Sunday are able to gather and to participate in the prayer of the church and how important that is. It's a reciprocal relationship. We pray for our donors who support this wonderful mission of God's mercy, and they pray for us and for our children.
Ready, one, and take one.
Producing the Mass for television is no small task, from TV lighting to multiple audio sources to knowing what shot to take and when. Executive producer-director Ed Gilliland has been there since day one.
We have a shading director, we have a technical director, myself, and our audio director, and we have 3 cameras, and a floor director, and 3 musicians usually. So it's a pretty tight group.
It's a long weekend for the TV crew, setting up on Friday, then recording as many as 8 Masses on the weekend, Masses that will be seen on WGN television over the next several weeks. 20 to 30 people attend the Mass in person, but everybody knows there's a much larger television congregation.
I have so many friends now that have parents in nursing homes and people who are sick that can't get to Mass, and they tell me again and again that it's just so wonderful for them to see this Mass every week. And they love to see, my face because they know me, but they also love the intimacy of the Mass itself and the beautiful, church, and the homilies are great. So it's been a wonderful ministry.
It's great to come here to sing these Masses, to be cantor for the Masses, because of the reaction from people. It's nice to run into people on the street. I also work in nursing homes, so it's nice to see people who have seen the Mass and they recognize me and they really appreciate what we do, what we get to bring to people.
From the volunteer musicians to the TV crew to the priests who celebrate the Masses, all are focused on helping the children of Mercy Home.
So Mercy Home for Boys and Girls has been in this community for 132 years. And it invites into the home children who come from some very difficult places in life. And when they come to Mercy Home, we embrace them as a part of this family. And we provide for them the necessary therapeutic support, educational support, but most importantly, we create a home that's filled with love for them so that they too can succeed in life.
So what are the nuances of directing a televised Mass? Is it anything like directing football, baseball, or hockey?
I think that when you're doing sports or a program such as that, is that it's more instinct than you're really flying. This, we have a chance to really plan out our shots. We know what's coming down the pike. And I think the most important thing about Sunday Mass is the intimacy of it. And we want to make the people at home feel as if they're in church.
There are also a few challenges for the celebrant, such as fitting Sunday Mass into a half-hour time slot. Has Father Scott gotten used to delivering a 3-minute homily?
No. So it's pretty interesting. So the TV Mass is 27.5 minutes, and to be able to celebrate the whole prayer of the church and to give what I would like to think is a halfway decent homily in 3 minutes is a great challenge, but a loving challenge.
With videographer Brian Brock, I'm Jim Dish, reporting from Mercy Home for Boys and Girls.
This is my body given for your freedom. This is my blood.
It looks like that was a good time.
It was, it's the first time in the 27 years I've been involved with the TV Mass that our own television network here at the Archdiocese came over and did a behind the scenes, and it was easy and it was fun, and hopefully it's informative.
Nice. Well, see, like I said, I have a great interest in this. So the whole ministry, and you even called it a ministry, of producing a Mass for those who cannot join their own communities, I think that's very important. I think that's very profound. Talk a little bit about that.
I agree with you, Todd. And when I hear that most is when I get letters from a daughter or a son of someone who has lost their mother or father, and they write so beautifully what it meant for their mother or for their father or for their grandparent to be able to participate in the liturgy, to participate in the prayer of the church via television because they can't get to it.
Yeah.
The stories are heartbreaking and beautiful.
Now, I can't help but make a connection in my own mind to pastoral care of the sick, right? The rites and the sacraments by which the church cares for those who are separated from their parishes because of illness, physical condition. That I see the televised Mass as a way of reconnecting them with the community from whom they've been separated because of illness.
Couldn't have said that better, because it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's a sense of belonging. From infancy, from baptism, you belong to this family of God that we call the church, and it's a way of continuing to feel a part of belonging to and with the church.
Not isolated.
Absolutely.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
You said 60,000?
Yeah, 60,000 viewers. So it's amazing. So it's throughout the Archdiocese of Chicago, and it bleeds up towards the Wisconsin border, and bleeds over towards Iowa, and bleeds over towards Indiana.
Oh my gosh.
It's a large viewing audience.
That is a widespread ministry.
Yeah, thank you.
Most important ministry and the most important presence of Mercy Home. Before we go, you brought along for those who might want to know a bit more.
Sure. A couple of years ago, our Holy Father declared a year of mercy.
Yep.
I thought, a year of mercy. I said, you know what? We've been doing years of mercy for 130 years at the time. So I wrote a little book called Years of Mercy. It tells 10 stories about kids who have come and lived at the home and the experience of hope and new life, Easter, that they've gotten in their life. The foreword is written by our own Cardinal Cupich, which I'm grateful for. But if anybody would like to know really more about Mercy Home and the over 760 young people entrusted to our care.
Right now.
Yeah,
700.
Right now. Just call Mercy Home and we'll send a book to them.
Excellent. Father Scott, thank you so much for being here, for telling us about Mercy Home and the televised Mass. It's always good to see you. Thanks very much.
Great. It's great being here.
And to our viewers, we want to invite you to be with us again next time for more Catholic Chicago.
We invite you to watch segments of Catholic Chicago and hundreds of additional Catholic videos at youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter.